No, Bruce, get away. Get away from King. They stood in line to find salvation. Oh. Well, what do you say, Bruce? Excuse me, Kinky. It's all right, mate. Oh, shit. Hi. Yes, Bruce, we can't. Bruce wants me to. I have my security animal, Bruce, on the porch with me. And sometimes I might have to throw him something. How are you? Not now, Bruce. No, not now, buddy. Later. Thanks for joining me. This is my first venture into the world of YouTube. I've been thinking about this for about a year to start doing poetry readings on YouTube. So that's what I'm going to do. And this is the first one. And I've had the idea for this for about a year. As you know, Kinky passed a year ago yesterday. And I wanted to do kind of a memorial reading for him. Was just kind of waiting for the right time. And this seems like the right time. Can you hear me okay? They hear me okay? If you can message me in the chat thingy if the volume is okay, because I don't know. Hey, Kent. Hey, brother. I love you, man. Is the sound okay, guys? And I was originally going to do this in my bedchamber at my desk. Oh, cool. Sounds good. But you know, up at the ranch at Echo Hill, Kinky had what he called his hummingbird lanai, which was this really just lovely porch off the small lodge where he lived, the main lodge, and it was this lovely porch with all these hummingbird feeders, and it overlooked Echo Hill, and there were a bunch of chairs out there and ashtrays, and you know, we would all just, whoever was passing through, we'd collect on that lanai and talk about stuff and tell jokes and stories. And so it just seemed to me that it might be more appropriate if I take this out to my own lanai porch. And that's where we are right now. My wife found this place about 8 years ago. And you know, it's a pretty modest house, not a big house. We didn't need a big house, but it's got a big honking yard with this really cool covered porch. And it's always reminded me of the porch at Echo Hill, because I just come out here and sit and think my thoughts and write my poems and drink my coffee. And so I thought this would be a better place to do it, even though it is a smidge moist. I don't really have much of a plan. I picked out a buttload of poems that I can read. I have no idea how long this is going to go on. My vision for this is just like, as I described, like we're all just hanging out on my porch, just talking about not only Kinky, but our friend Ruth Buzzi, Ruthie, who left us to join Kinky in paradise not too long ago. So I'm going to read some poems for her and Kent. I know my brother Kent is watching. I love you, man. I love you with all my heart. And so we're all just sitting on the porch having a good time, is how I look at it. And I don't know, we may have some family members or folks from the family unit show up at some point. My wife couldn't be here today. She's on a business trip with her new career of being a community health worker for the state of Texas, of which I am extraordinarily proud. She's an amazing woman. So she's on that, or doing that for the day. But she's able to watch. And I love her with all my heart as well. Let's see, what else before we begin? I'm sipping Big Red. When I first started the live stream, I realized I had to pee. And so I went in, and that's why it took me so long to come back out here. And depending on how long this goes, I may have to pee again. So if I have to get up and excuse myself, that's why. And you, those of you over the age of 55 know exactly what I'm talking about. When you got to go, you got to go. The other thing, unfortunately, I have my Kinky doll with me too. That sounds funny, my Kinky doll. This was gifted to me by my very good friend and brother, Jesse Ochoa. And he doesn't, I got to get some fresh batteries in the Kingster here. He doesn't talk anymore, but Kinky says, hi, what's going on? Fuck him and feed him Fruit Loops. So Kinky will be hanging out with us. There might be a little cussing here and there, so watch the little ones. What else? This sucks, and some of you are going to hate my fucking guts for this, but I quit smoking about a month before I got my surgery, my hernia repair mesh surgery, and that was about a month ago, and I was doing pretty good until a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I kind of picked up. You're going to see me smoke a couple of cigarettes, and I'm so sorry. If my colorectal surgeon is watching, I haven't coughed at all, so there no worries. I'm pretty healed up, and I'm going to stop again tomorrow. In fact, that was my goal. But just don't freak out if you see me light the odd cigarette. That's Bruce saying hi. Also have a very good friend out there watching, and I'm going to read him a few poems as well. If you're familiar with my poems, you have probably heard or read a poem or two about the character Mr. Peach. Mr. Peach is Ben Peach, who is my best friend of almost 40 years. And Ben is out there watching with his sister Sophie. And Ben's kind of having a tough go of it right now. So we're going to read a couple of poems from my bestie, Ben Peach, my trail partner. I love you too, man. With all my heart. So that's what's going on. I want to start off with something by Kinky. I was kind of looking through some of his books, and he's just he was an exquisite writer of fiction and prose, as well as a master songwriter, songsmith. And I was kind of looking through the books. I thought I'd read something, to kind of kick this off. And I found the introduction to Bruce. We're making art here, man. We're making art. Bruce. There's nobody there. So I have this book here. What would Kinky do? And it's always been one of my favorite books. And so I'm going to start off. Bruce, damn you. Sorry. Bruce, sit. Be still. I'm going to read you. I'm going to read you the introduction, if I'm able to Kinky's book, What Would Kinky Do? And I hadn't read this in years, and I looked it over. And remember, this book was written probably around 2007. It was published in 2008. Just remember that. 2007 is when he wrote this book. All right, Bruce is laying down, so I think we're good. So this is the introduction for What Would Kinky Do? By Richard Samet, Kinky Friedman. Let us begin this ordeal with a fairly safe assumption. No human being who has ever lived in this world has ever taken good advice. Millions upon millions of people, however, have gladly and gratefully taken bad advice, foolish advice, pop advice, and glib advice. Why is this? No doubt it's partly because of the perversity of human nature. This notwithstanding, the other part, I believe, is because of the sanctimonious, constipated, pompous, smug, and self-righteous way that good advice is usually given. This is the main reason most people reject good advice and instead ask themselves, what would Jesus do? Or what would Ernest Tubb do? Or what would Will Rogers do? In their time, these folks probably asked their own version of the same question. Jesus indubitably asked, what would my father do? Ernest Tubb might have wondered, what would Jimmy Rogers do? And Will Rogers no doubt asked, what would Mark Twain do? This way you avoid dealing with the sermonizing, patronizing advice giver altogether. You merely find someone you would like to be when you grow up and cut right to the chase. This is why I have assiduously avoided giving any direct good advice in this book. Had I attempted to do so, sure as hell, it would have been summarily rejected by you, gentle reader. Instead, I've tried to cleverly couch everything I deem to be good advice within a deceptive, deviously designed delivery system, i.e., humor, misdirection, and, of course, lots and lots of common Zen bullshit. I have come to believe that good advice, like ragtag, weather-beaten human wisdom of any kind, can only be delivered or received obliquely, accidentally, intuitively. Few of us want the hard truth these days anyway. Mankind never has wanted to deal with that. So if you want a religion that still makes you think you're a good Christian, even though you own 10 homes and 50 cars, you've come to the wrong book. What would Donald Trump do? What would Bill Gates do? For answers, look at Columbus reaching the Bank of America. Look at the sad, narrow-casted, star-bucked world all around you. There are many people in the world today whom we would call important. There are precious few indeed whom we might consider truly significant. If your goal is to make a lot of money and have a lot of power, and that's all you really care about, you're a shallow, mean-minded, vacuous excuse for a human being, and I don't want you reading this book anyway. Stop before it's too late. You're wasting your time and my time, and time is the money of love. If, on the other hand, you're the kind of person who feels it might be nice to marry a prostitute, contract syphilis, kill yourself between 2 rows of corn, and leave a lasting legacy of love and truth and beauty, then you might ask yourself, what would Vincent van Gogh do? You might also ask yourself, where did Vincent van Gogh? That one I can answer for you. He went into the creation of what Emily Dickinson called the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. That would be a little thing called hope. He also went into the unconscious construction of what we call the still small voice within. That would be our conscious, which may not be the voice of God, but it's close enough for country dancing. Finally, he went to the heart of all mankind's dearest, desperate, diaper-driving dreams. By this time, it should be clear to most readers that this introduction, as well as the book itself, is largely ghostwritten by Mary Higgins Clark. I got a lot of things on my plate right now, and I can't be concerned with casting my soul into purgatory and hoping some 3-headed dog will catch the frisbee. I want to live. I want to paint. I want to finish this fucking introduction. So please do not ask, what would Kinky do? Because that, my friends, depends on you. You know, the dude could write, and the dude could freaking write. And I need a cigarette after that one. Sorry. Hate me in the morning. First off, he loved Vincent van Gogh, and I think I kind of endeared myself to him the first night I went up to Echo Hill, I guess around 14, 15 years ago, and I walked into his kitchen, his famous kitchen, and right next to the stove, he had a picture of Vincent van Gogh painting stapled to the wall of the cabin of the kitchen. And I walked in and I said, "Oh, Dr. Gachet." He goes, "What?" I said, "You got a painting of Dr. Gachet, Vincent van Gogh. That's the painting of Gachet right up there. That was his shrink." He goes, "Really? Oh, I didn't know that shit. That was a goddamn shrink?" "Yeah, that was his shrink, Dr. Gachet." And like ever since then, we were right as rain, if that makes sense. Am I making sense? Can you hear this okay? Is everything sounding all right? Sorry. So I'll start off with my stuff. In fact, of his writing, because he really was just an incredible writer. I remember one night early on, or at some point, we were sitting up at the lodge, and we were talking about writing. We talked about writing a lot, he and I. And we were talking about his writing, and I admitted something to him that was absolutely true. I said, "Kinky, I can't read your stuff." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I can't read it because when I read your writing, I feel like a fucking 9-year-old with a crayon. Like I haven't even started yet, I guess he took it as a compliment, but every single sentence the man wrote was a work of art. He really could do a lot with a handful of words. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'm going to read some poems for Kinky. I'm going to read some poems for Ruthie as well, and then I'm going to read some new stuff that I haven't told anybody or read for anybody. This is the book Clowns and Outlaws, which only took me 40 fucking years to write. And this is available on Amazon. This is the fancy hardcover version, which I actually like because the images, the photography comes off really nice in this version. But I'm rambling. So we'll begin. Is everybody having a good time? I'm going to read the first poem I wrote for Kinky when I went up to the ranch for the first time. And I read this at his memorial service 1 year ago today. Or, well, I guess not a year ago today, a year and a week or something like that. It's called Getting Kinky. And this one's for Marcy Friedman, Kinky's sister. Getting Kinky. The cigar, like a black piece of wood made slick by a night rain, twirled neurotically in his thick fingers, then held to his lips in between proclamations. I'm homeless, he announced, with his cigar hand resting on the black steering wheel as we drifted into Kerrville at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night on our way to the H-E-B for some donuts and some lunch meat. Why do you say that, Kink? His sister asked, propped up on her elbows on the back bench seat, her eyes moist with an unrelenting fondness. What I mean is, you could drop my ass off at a goddamn gas station in Amarillo at 3 in the fucking morning, and I'd still be home. I'd still be in Texas. Texas is my home. And it was here, in this mediocre moment, with the red and the green traffic lights of Kerrville lighting up his squinty eyes, hiding beneath that big black cowboy hat of his, that I got kinky. As he went on to explain how the shrimp cocktail with corn salsa at El Sombrero was the best fucking shit in the whole goddamn universe, and in fact, it was. It was a really fun weekend. Look at the ranch. What do we have next here? I'm kind of feeling my way through this. So this, I read 2 poems at his memorial service in Kerrville, and this was the other one. And this is an absolutely true story, as all of these are all true. Well, I started writing these poems. I knew instinctively that, because Kinky, as a routine thing, would just say and do brilliant shit and interesting shit, And so, very early on, when he would do something or say something, or we'd have an interaction or whatever that kind of stuck in my mind, I would always try to write a poem about it, just to record it, and to have it there for me to kind of look at later. So this was a funny little moment. And also, Kinky was very tolerant of me, for the length of our friendship. I was also, quite the heavy drinker, to say the least. I'm an alcoholic. And so I was known as the guy that would clear out Kinky's liquor cabinet. So, a typical weekend at Echo Hill, I'd go up there and it'd just be he and I most of the time with the dogs. And, I drink like a 6-pack of tall boys, and we'd usually do a couple of shots of tequila. And this poem is written after hanging out for a couple of hours. It's called Getting Kinky for Cash. Driving to Medina on a Sunday afternoon, the soft black curls of his soft black hair poking out from beneath his black ball cap. He started singing, for no apparent reason, a few lines from the ballad of Ira Hayes, to which I countered with a bit from Cry, Cry, Cry. And then he hummed a little from Big River, and I, buzzed off his tequila, warbled my way through 30 seconds of 5 Feet High and Rising. And at this, he sighed and said, Johnny Cash was my hero. And I replied, yeah, mine too. And then we drove the rest of the way in silence. He's singing Johnny Cash songs with Kinky Friedman in his pickup truck. Oh, okay. So yeah, we lost Ruth Buzzi, our friend Ruth Buzzi. We called her Ruthie not too long ago, and her husband Kent, my good brother Kent, is watching right now, and Kent invited me. It was my great honor to read a poem. I met Kent and Ruthie at a fundraising concert in Kerrville that Kinky put up or put together for the rescue ranch, which was still going on now. The dogs and up there, and so he did a charity concert to raise money for the ranch. And Ray Benson was there, and Billy Joe Shaver was there, and Jesse Dayton was there. Uh, Chet O'Keefe. Anybody know where Chet O'Keefe is? I am curious. And everybody donating their time to do a show and raise some money, and it was a great, like, just a great freaking day, man. And Kent and Ruthie showed up, and Kent and I had been friends online for a couple of years, but this is the first time I'd met met them face to face. And Syria, my wife, was there, and it was just a delightful day. And I'm like everybody else. I grew up watching Ruthie on TV, and she's the queen of comedy. And I was struck by Kent and Ruthie's very obvious, almost mythic love story. Just observing them together. And I wrote a poem a few days after we met Kent and Ruthie, and this is what I read at her service a few weeks ago. And I hope I can get through it. Yeah, it's called The Queen of Comedy. The Queen of Comedy. She sits quietly on the edge of the couch in the green room of the old theater. And she's so tiny, she barely takes up a far corner of the cushion. Her little legs crossed and her arms folded, silently observing the rabble of roadies and cowboys loading up on brisket and sausage and cornbread, them sipping beers and doing shots of spiced bourbon. And the laughter of it takes her back through the undertow of time to the old days when she walked with giants in their shimmering tuxedos and slicked back hair, and how her blood tingled as their laughter turned to tears with every whack of her old lady's purse. For these were the best of times, like an old fine wine sipped in the presence of gods. The holy of holies, the casino ballroom, sanctified in warm liquor and the bitter incense of Dean Martin's cigarette smoke. And thinking back on it all, she smiles to herself as her adoring husband, watching dutifully over her like a china doll, leans down and whispers in her ear, "They need you on stage now, Ruthie." The smile spreads to her cheeks as he helps her to her feet and leads her gently through the old familiar shadow of the wings, where the golden light of the spots creep in under the black curtains, and she can hear the noise of the audience as a man introduces her, and her blood tingles, and her husband's fingers release her to the stage, and she steps out. And upon seeing her, the crowd bursts into a sudden roar of laughter and fondness. And, as it always has, the sound of it takes her breath away, like a cream pie to the face, or a crazy old lady whacking you with her purse. And I got some new ones that I wrote for Ruthie that we'll read a little later on. There's the picture of Siri and me meeting Ruthie. That was just such a wonderful day. Here's another poem, and you probably have picked up on the titleization thing, and that most of the poems I wrote for Kinky are getting kinky on the couch, getting kinky in the bathroom. You know, sounded funny to me. I don't know if he thought it was funny, but I thought it was funny. So this one's This one's called Getting Kinky in Las Vegas. And I'm going to read this one, but Kinky went through, and he hadn't written any music, any new songs, I think, for about 30 years when I met him, which was in 2009 in Austin. And he's still working. I was working on the mystery book when I met him. He was writing a lot of forwards and introductions for people. He was doing some short tours, but he hadn't written any music in quite a long time. And it didn't really come up. And I never pestered him about it. I never asked, like, "Well, let's write some songs," But there was one night when I did mention it. And eventually he would start writing again. And he went through this amazing period after, I think, Kent, like 40 years without writing a single song. And the man, Big G, but the man, just this river of music just flowed out of him. Once he got those first couple of songs down, it was a river that wouldn't stop, man. And he ended up recording, I'm trying to think here, man. He ended up recording like 4 studio albums in a 10-year period. So once he got going, it was just this amazing thing to watch, this man just pouring his soul out in these songs. And they're all available on the website, kinkyfriedman.com. He was able to record his final album, Poet of Motel 6, literally in the last few months of his life. He had written a bunch of songs, and he was. I'm not going to go into details about his. He died of Parkinson's. We all know that, but his condition was getting worse, and he went to Austin with Amy Lee Nelson and a few other folks, Phil Brush, and they recorded the record, and they got his voice tracks down. And honestly, had he waited maybe 2 more weeks, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So this literally was the last thing he did in life, this record. And it's a gorgeous record called Poet of Motel 6, and I would check that out. But point being that this poem is about the only time I ever brought it up to him was this one time, and that was it. It's called Getting Kinky in Las Vegas. He was sacked out in his easy chair, surrounded by his many dogs, themselves snoring at his feet. His tired eyes 2 paper cuts as he mused, "I really like this young lady in Vegas. She's a sweet kid. Damn pretty, too. Why don't you write her a song?" I asked. From the depths of his chair, as the fireplace snapped and sputtered, his glare focused on me, as if he were sighting in a new Bushmaster. "I have not written a new song in over 30 years, he hissed. And I wanted to ask him why, but I popped a fresh Lone Star instead. I never brought it up again. But it was soon, it was that year, I think, that he started writing those new songs. And it just, like I said, once it started, there was no stopping him. Oh, I'm going to read this. I didn't plan on reading this, but I'm going to read it just for shits and giggles. And because my wife isn't here, and I love my wife. These are my vows. I'm going to read my marriage vows. Is that cool? Is everybody cool with that? If I do that, since she is not here, and she is working very hard. It's a very cool wedding. We got married at the courthouse for ourselves, basically, with the immediate family, and then we had a wedding in Helotes a year later. Mr. Trey Ware, my good brother Trey Ware, officiated and did a great job. And Bill Taylor announced our guests. It was just a really, really cool day. But I don't think people expected my vows to be exactly what they were, because I basically wrote my vows like a poem. Vows to Syria, February 14th, 2016. She laughed, by the way. She enjoyed it, so I didn't get kicked out of my own wedding. Vows to Syria. I love you. I really, really do. With all my heart, you little shit. You're the best person in the whole wide world to me, and I know it hasn't been an easy road loving me, but that wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right. I was just afraid of being loved the way that you love me, which is why tonight, in front of everyone we hold dear, I vow these things to you, my Syria. I vow to be your husband. I vow to be your very best friend. I vow to be your lover, your sentinel, your warrior, and your clown. I vow my loyalty to you. I vow my honesty, even when it stings, especially then. I vow to take your side in every dispute. I vow to protect you and be your avenger. I vow to be the person with his head on the pillow in the dark, listening to you rant and cry on the worst day of your life. I vow to never leave you alone. I vow to be your cowboy. I vow to be your penguin and grow old along with you. Watch our kids grow up and grow old themselves. And I vow also, to the best of my strengths and quirks and weaknesses, to be a cantankerous son of a bitch the older I get, and to leave my socks and shirts and chonies on the bathroom floor for you to pick up and give you something to do in your old age. But most of all, above it all, I vow to ride the river with you by my side until the end of it. And if I should go first, I vow to wait for you in the bend in the river, where the river meets the sea and the sea into the ocean, because I can't imagine tripping the universe with anyone else but you. My beloved bride, my laughing, silly Syria. And if you will have me, I vow these things to you forever and a day, and a little bit after that, as best as this old fool can manage. Because I love you. I really, really do, with all my heart. You beautiful, loving, funny, insane, persistent, tough, and sexy little shit you. I vow these things to you before God and man. Amen. I love you, baby. You're crazy, but I love you. You're absolutely fucking nuts, but I love you. She's nuts in a good way. Well, we've been married 2014, 2015. Yeah, I guess 11 years now. And she's a little squirt. She is. She keeps me right. She keeps me going. I'm going to read a poem. I wrote this many years ago, okay? So don't even judge. Okay, this was many years ago when I first started hanging out with Kinky. But the poem exists for the last line, so it's called Outlaw. Rolling home from Kinky Friedman's place, an hour down Bandera on a suspended license, with out-of-date tags, a big fat Mexican joint resting between my knuckles on the steering wheel, and old Waylon Jennings cranked all the way on the CD player so I can't hear my oil light beeping. And as I pass the cross on the hill, I remember the last thing Kinky said to me. It ain't the pot of gold, boy. It's the rainbow. I was a mess back then. I'm not quite the mess I used to be. Everybody good? All right, so this one's called Getting Kinky on the Couch. Everybody still there? Is this working? I haven't looked at my phone. Okay, I guess it's working. Yeah, a lot of times when I'd go up, in the early days especially, when I go up about once a month to the ranch, and we lived an hour apart. I mean, it was literally 2 turns for me, one on Bandera, one into Kinky's driveway. And I go up there, and it would just be he and I and the dogs in those early days. And it was really, a lot of it was pretty boring. I mean, we just watched the news. We talk about stuff going on. Kinky usually had three subjects swirling around his brain, and he would kind of pivot between those three things throughout the whole night. Usually the first thing was the weather. I don't know why, but God damn it, is it going to rain or what? He was always talking about the weather on Echo Hill. The second was usually, a woman he was in love with. And the third was usually a writing project. We spent a lot of time talking about writing. And practically from the first weekend I went up there until, I couldn't, pre-COVID, I really couldn't go up anymore. Then I got sick and I didn't spend the night. But prior to that, we could be sitting watching TV, talking about something, and we would just, he'd go off to his office or I'd go off to the kitchen, and we'd write for a while, and we'd come back, and watch some more news, and talk some more bullshit, and that might go on all night. So, and I slept on his couch. He had this couch in the living room there that I would crash out on, and a lot of people, a lot of artists, artsy fartsy types and creative vagabonds have slept on this couch over the years. So spiritually, I was in pretty good company, but I would crash out on that couch, and Winnie the dog would join me. And so that's what this poem's about: getting kinky on the couch. I have spent 1,000 nights drunk off whiskey and red wine, passed out on Kinky's couch, with the blue moon peeking through the black nettle of porch vine outside, and then falling in silver rays across the hardwood floor of the cabin through the old window panes. As my bunkmate, good dog Winnie Friedman, named after Winston, snuggles under my neck or in the bend of my knees. And until last night, I have slept like a log on that damn couch. Maybe I was just a little too sober yesterday, as I tossed and turned and wrestled with the blue vinyl mattress. But then, around 3 a.m., when everything seemed hopeless, I heard a new sound. Typing. Just old Kinky Friedman typing away in his bedroom on his old word processor. Clackety, 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 clack, clack. And the sound of it lulled me to sleep like the second movement of Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 8 in C minor, the Pathétique. For in the clackety clack of the sounds of his calloused fingers smacking the keys, I felt peace in my heart and hope for the world as I drifted off into dream. We had some good times, you and I. Okay. I told you my friend Ben Peach is watching from Connecticut. Hey, buddy. Partner. And so this is one I had written for him. And Mr. Peach is a world traveler. And he has been bouncing around the world for a number of years and having adventures. And Ben, again, is my best friend of over 40 years. We've been hanging out. I'm going to read a new one for him in a little bit. But this one's called God's One Good Eye for Ben Peach. Mr. Peach sleeps in a camper with his cat somewhere in the grit and silence of the Mojave Desert, where the only sounds are the dry whipping winds and the wild donkeys who roam the plains at night, singing their mournful donkey songs outside of Peach's van like a traveling gospel choir, excommunicated from the plastic church of a noisy world, naked and free and dusty like Peach, the hobo rabble of them whispering their prayers at dusk, as God closes his one good eye behind the wispy clouds of another Mojave sunset in crimson, blue, and gold. That man has seen some sights. Moving right along here. And I'm going to read some other things too. Is everybody good? Is this cool? Should I read an alcoholic poem? Or what do we have coming up here? No Romeo. A sad day in any old poet's life is the day he realizes young women no longer find him beautiful. I have embraced my old fartness. I love being a crabby old fart. I really freaking do. I absolutely love it. Uh, Here's one I wrote for Amy Winehouse. It's called Of Angels and Redbirds. Every now and again, on the rarest of days, a red bird with a broken wing will tumble to the ground from its nest of sticks and cigarettes, hanging loose in the branches of a high English oak. And as it spins round and round towards an uncertain fate, her last song on the way down, with no hands to catch her, will haunt the healthy and the living earthside like the undone things and the unsaid things, unsaid words on a deathbed, in a cluttered flat at midnight, the midnight of our random passing. For the music of the lost and the lonely and the damned is the sweetest tune, like the song of the redbird, offered with that final draw of wind into her lungs, and silenced suddenly in the hard ending of her, as we turn her little limp body over in our palms, her head lolling to the side, her thin tattooed skin blue and cool and translucent, like our shame, pissing and moaning about the fuckery of our busy, stupid lives and deaf to the warning songs of angels and redbirds, gifting us with a glimpse of heaven and slipping back to black. This is one I wrote for Kinky. And I have to sort of tell the story of this one. Well, this was during the last year of his life. Um, and I remember I'd gone up for a few hours, and Marcy was working up at the main house, and so it's just me and Kinky in the lodge, and um, really couldn't talk much at that point. Um, and I just kind of sat there with him and just kind of rambled, talked, and I kind of realized that, you know what, I've kind of had my last full conversation with the man, you know, in a sense, and that was sad to me. But the last conversation really I had with him was that this poem is about. The conversation when we would sit and we talked, because this was maybe just a handful of weeks before, and Kinky had a great love of his life, which people who are familiar with his life story know all about. Her name was Casey, and we were sitting in the kitchen, and Marcy was there, and she was kind of fixing Kinky some food and stuff, and there's this picture on the wall of that kitchen of Casey in silhouette, and there's only like 2 pictures of her that even exist, and this one is hung on that kitchen wall for many, many years. And he was sitting there, and we had this little interaction, and I ended up writing this poem. It's called Silhouette, and in fact, the thumbnail image on this is on this YouTube thing is the picture I took that day, on which this poem was really kind of based. It's called Silhouette. She was a young Jewish girl, legend in her beauty, for she was the kind of muse that young drunken poets and old country singers write their best rhymes for. And he met her in California in the mid-70s, and they fell crazy in love as only some people do, I am told, because he never talked about her much to me until just recently, as he sipped his coffee and borrowed one of my Pall Malls because he had left his cigar in the living room. And feeling curious, I asked him, "Whatever happened to her, Kink?" And he replied with a heavy sigh, She took a wrong turn into nowhere. That was all he said. That was all I asked. We sat there for a bit in his kitchen as Marcy fixed him a plate, and I'd steal a glance now and then just over his shoulder at the only known photograph of her in silhouette, hanging on a wall cluttered with movie stars and presidents. And her arms are crossed, as if she is waiting patiently for someone to join her on a beach in California or maybe paradise at dusk. And in my prayers for him, I can see a second silhouette walking up behind her, with a shadow in the shape of a guitar. And after they sit together in the sand and share a gentle kiss, a young Jewish country singer, now an angel, plays a song for Casey. I read this one. This is one of my hospital poems. It's called Lady Morphine. Lady Morphine. I wrote this when I got sick a few years ago. Lady Morphine. I fell in love the instant they slid that needle into my IV tube, and the clear honey of it seeped into my blood. And I sank a little into my pillow before levitating several feet above the bed. And the pretty nurse leading me about the room by my tubes and wires like a fucking balloon. And as I drifted back down into my undulating bedclothes, I groaned the first word that came to mind in the sexy floaty buzz of it. And the word was, wow. Yeah, morphine's some good shit. I'm glad I don't need it anymore, but morphine will fuck you up. I don't have any more hospital poems. This one's for my daughter, Avery, who is now a young lady. And this one I wrote, one of the things about, and I've been off the booze now for 2 years and I think 4 months coming up in a few days. It's the best thing I ever did. I wish I had done it sooner. And I think this poem is kind of about that idea, because your kids just keep growing up on you. We'll get through one more heavy one and then I'll read some funny shit. This is called Magic Time Machine. If I had the keys to the magic time machine, I'd set the clock for the day you were born and start all over again. I'd hold your purple little body wrapped in soft linens in my arms in the rocking chair of the maternity ward just a few minutes longer than I did back then, until they make me hand you back to your mom. I'd watch The Sound of Music with you one more time until the bitter end, all 2 hours and 52 minutes, only this time I'd memorize all the words and sing every song with you. And I wouldn't secretly hope you'd fall asleep by Edelweiss so I could go do something I thought I needed to do. I'd be there the day you lost your training wheels and proudly rolled your pink stallion down the street as your mother and grandfather Robert were running behind you, clapping and cheering. And I'll always wonder how you must have felt in that one moment without me. I'd be there for every single opening night from middle school through college, and I'd buy the same seat in the front row so that every time you took the stage, you would know where to look for me, sitting there, proud as hell, with a bouquet of fresh flowers waiting for you just under the seat by my boots, newly polished. I'd make you one more Sunday morning breakfast after sleeping until noon because we were up all night on the couch watching our favorite British TV shows. I'd take you to all the cool amusement parks we never got to visit. I'd sit on the phone with you longer and listen, just listen. And I'd buy you more Big Macs, and I'd get you a tattoo, and I'd take you on more long drives, and I'd do 1,000 things over and different. If I could just start again with you, my beautiful daughter. But most of all, if I had the keys to the magic time machine and could set the clock for the day you were born, I would keep the promise that I made to myself many years before. That when and if I brought a child into the world, I would put the bottle down, because I didn't. And it haunts me now. All the holes I left behind for us where a memory should have gone to live. And I'm so very deeply sorry for that, because I love you so much, Avery. And I wish I'd been a better man for you all those years ago when I was young and so were you, and we still had plenty of time and magic to waste. Ooh. All right, let's read something fucked up here. What do we got here? This is a new book I'm working on. It's called Turnaround. It's not finished yet. I'm only about 100 pages in. But there's some goofy shit in this one, I think. Let's take a look here. Okay, let me read this one. This is a new one I wrote for my generation of folks. Oh, we're at almost an hour. You doing good? You okay? We'll speed it up a little here. This one's called Smells Like Voltaren. Smells Like Voltaren. We remember being dropped off at the mall for the day when we were 10 and playing Galaga at the arcade while sipping Mountain Dews and Han Solo t-shirts. We remember what it was like to ask everyone to stay off the phone while we waited for a girl to call us back at home. We remember listening to Pink Floyd's The Wall for the very first time on a cassette in a boombox in November of 1979. And then playing it over and over and over again, searching for hidden meanings. We remember drinking Natty Bohs and smoking pot from a toilet paper roll with a bit of tinfoil while watching The Young Ones on MTV every Sunday night. We remember the fall of the Berlin Wall, the X-Files, Twin Peaks, and where we were and what we were doing the day the DJs told us in sad voices on the radio that Kurt Cobain had blown his fucking brains out with a shotgun. For that was our zeitgeist, if we had one at all. Fuck yous, rage, and suicide. And it's funny how fast 40 years can zip right by you when you're not paying attention. And then one day you wake up and suddenly realize that Chris Novoselic looks like some old dude who owns a cookie shop in a Hallmark Christmas movie. But it's okay getting old, our little group. We're the last generation to straddle the river of time, with one thrift store combat boot on the banks of the old world of video rental stores and portable black and white TVs, and another orthopedic shoe on the cluttered shores of a brave new world not quite as brave as we once were, with its TikToks and Instagrams and artificial intelligence and self-driving electric cars and deep fake porn, Neuralink brain implants, and sexy robot girlfriends asking you about your day. Which makes us the last bunch of humans who will have to remember anything at all. And I'm glad it's you and me and us. And we're still here, living in this place. Although, admittedly, it is a little weird hearing basket case at the H-E-B when I am waiting in line to pick up my prescriptions and a bag of lavender-scented Epsom salts. What do I got going on here? That's a funny poem. I had written a new one. Actually, let me read Ken's still with us. I want to read a poem I wrote for Ruthie. Um, there you go. Just a few weeks ago. Oh, then I'll read a kinky poem. Everybody good? But, excuse me. Okay, here we go. This is the one I wrote for Ken a few weeks ago. It's called Loving Ruthie for Brother Kent. My job was to finish her margaritas because she could never drink a full one. And being in her space was the most delightful place in the world, in the moment of it, whether at a Mexican joint up in the hill country, or a bar in Austin, or in a metal fold-out chair, or on an old couch at Echo Hill, with Kinky's dogs napping at your feet, because you knew, no matter what, that you were going to laugh and smile. For she made it impossible to be sad around her. And I imagine today to be a fun day in paradise, as she is crapping. Let me start that one again. And I imagine today to be a fun day in paradise, as she is cracking up the saints and the seraphim, while giving the old Jew with wings the stink eye and complaining in her thick New English accent, Jesus, King, can you put out that damn cigar? We're in heaven, for Christ's sake. Don't you see the no smoking sign? And for all the margaritas that I finished for her, I once asked her beloved Kent for a single simple favor in return, which is how today I can genuinely claim that the queen of comedy, the one, the only, the inimitable Ruth Buzzi, did, in fact, slap me on the ass with her purse at El Sombrero in Kerrville, Texas. And next to my daughter being born, my wife saying I do, and the friendship of a certain old Jew, it was and always shall be the great honor of my life. And if I am sad at all, it is for the world, a deadly serious place, not quite as funny as it was the day before sweet Ruthie took her bows and left him wanting more. What should we read now? I may read this one just because there's another one here. I was going to read another one for my wife. Which one should it be? Well, we'll see. We'll see what we're going to read here. Where are we? Oh, there was one other one for Kinky. I was going to read the next one for Kinky. That's kind of funny. Read some more Kinky poems. Where are you, you bugger? It's called Getting Kinky with My Girlfriend, and this is a really funny poem. It's a true story, too. And this poem is about the first time I took my wife up to Echo Hill because I didn't do that. I didn't take anybody up there for years. I didn't, take friends with me. I kept it, respected friendship, and I just didn't take people up there until I took my wife up there, and I wrote a poem about that experience, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. Getting Kinky with My Girlfriend. And then I'm going to read another poem from my buddy Ben. Getting Kinky with My Girlfriend. It was a big deal, for it was the first time that I was bringing someone with me up to the ranch at Echo Hill to meet Kinky Friedman and his beloved dogs, because I'd asked a girl to marry me. I wanted to build a land bridge linking my two worlds together. So I asked him if it was cool, and he said yes. And after the expected awkward pleasantries and meeting all 5 of the dogs in his tiny cluttered kitchen, he pulled a large bundle from the fridge, removed the plastic bag, and there in his hands was a package of half a dozen thick, glistening New York strip steaks. "What do you think of these fuckers?" he asked, before pulling the cellophane off and turning towards the cabinets for a frying pan, as we slipped into the living room to watch the news and whisper, "He likes you. He really likes you." "How do you know?" my wife asked. "Babe, I've been coming up here for over 4 years, and he's never made steaks before. Usually all there is to eat is some donuts and a box of Church's chicken from the night before." And I was giving her both thumbs up as the luxurious scent of those gorgeous steaks sizzling in the pan wafted through the lodge and settled in our excited bellies, until the pops and snaps went silent, and we crept back into that small kitchen, and there he was, seated now at the table with a knife and fork, and hovering proudly over a plate stacked with dripping pink, steaming, luscious meat. And as we stood there salivating, and he asked my future wife about her life and things, we watched in muted horror as Kinky Friedman began to gingerly cut into 6 of the finest steaks I've ever seen, and then dropped the chunks one by one to the floor for the dogs, who swarmed the room like a bunch of frenzied tiger sharks ripping apart a dead blue whale. And after all the yipping and slobbering had subsided, and the beef was gone, and the dogs had shuffled off to their rugs and pillows to nap away the feast, Kinky sighed and said, "Well, shit, I don't know if you're hungry or not, but there's some donuts here, and I think that chicken in the fridge is still good." And so, swallowing our hunger and our chuckles, we made ourselves a plate and spent the rest of the day watching ESPN in the living room. And Kinky was impressed by the fact that my girlfriend knew so much about football. You want to hear a nasty little poem? I write a lot about addiction stuff. Obviously, this was something somebody said to me, and it's just a true thing somebody said to me. Addiction. The old guy from Hollywood sat in the chair with his thin legs crossed. And as we talked about surviving the horrors of opioid addiction, he mentioned out of the blue, almost to himself, as if I wasn't there at all, "I knew a guy once who stole a morphine suppository out of his dying mother's ass and offered it to me." Then adding, with a hint of disgust, "I turned it down." That's how it gets, man. That's how it gets. I wrote a poem I had mentioned a little while ago when Kinky really couldn't talk much near the end there, and I had written a poem. My favorite song by Kinky Friedman is "The Wild Man from Borneo." I just think it's a beautifully written song, and he did a version. It's originally, when he did it, I think in the 90s, it was kind of a catchy country song, and then he re-recorded it on the Loneliest Man I've Ever Known, the record he did of some of his older songs, and he slowed it down, and it's just a gorgeous song. It's always been my favorite. And after kind of hanging out with him that afternoon, and we really weren't able to talk much, I went home and I wrote this poem for Kinky. And it's called Captain Midnight's Revival Tour. After the last of the lions and the dancing bears are walked back to their cages, and the sawdust is raked for the next day's matinee. Let me start that one down again. I'm getting mushy mouth. Blah, blah, blah. I'm getting mushy mouth. I should do some vocal exercises. Tree, 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 tree. All right, here we go. Blah, blah. All right, blah. Tree, 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 tree. Captain Midnight's Revival Tour. After the last of the lions and the dancing bears are walked back to their cages, and the sawdust is raked for the day's next matinee, and all is quiet at the circus tonight, I apply the cold cream to my face and watch as my red and purple cartoon smile goes spinning down the drain, then sneak across the grounds to the last car in the train, where the wild man from Borneo sits alone with his dogs, napping at his stocking feet. His kinky hair soft and gray, like pillow filling now, and his eyes slow and wise, like a sad country waltz. And we don't talk as much as we used to, but we don't have to anymore. We have heard each other's stories, and we know each other's faces in the good times and the rain. And so our poems intertwine like the fabric of a tent flap. And I am remembering him as I once knew him, as I smoke my Luckies, and he twists his cigar, as I do every night, in the quiet of us. I see his hair black and fierce beneath the sharp brim of his hat back then, the two of us sitting around a table in a green room or a taqueria, as he hoists his glass of cool Mexican mouthwash, and I do the same. And he smiles thinly and says, "Don't go dying on me, boy." And I reply, "Not tonight, old man," which feels today, in this weird twilight, like 1,000 years and towns and circuses ago, as he gently falls asleep, the stub of the black cigar hanging from his lips, and his head resting on the cabin wall beneath the picture of the tattooed lady, torn at the corner. And I slip back outside, back to my busy clown life at the other end of the train, behind the lions and the dancing bears, where I'll apply my smile once again before the next day's matinee. And the bleachers fill with the laughter of folks who paid $1 just to see me, but they'll never come to know. What do we feel like doing now? I might read this one just for the fuck of it. I don't know if I've ever read this one aloud. It's probably very racist. We in San Antonio, for when I moved here, we still had Big Chief. Remember Big Chief? Down by the car dealership on 410. It's this big, ridiculous looking Indian statue, I guess, and it's called Big Chief. And just within the past, I guess, couple of years, it's been taken down because I guess it was deemed insensitive or what have you. And so I wrote a poem about it. It's called The Life and Death of Big Chief. And then we'll be getting pretty close to the end, I think. The Life and Death of Big Chief. He was forged in wire, paint, and fiberglass to sell Pontiacs in the name of the chief of the Ottawa of Michigan, until old Red McCombs reserved for him a parcel of land in an auto dealership off Loop 410 on Callahan in San Antonio, Texas in 1977. where Big Chief would stand proud for the next 44 years on a pair of metal stilts overlooking the highway. And he had broad red shoulders, a muscular chest, washboard abs, and big, weird, pissed-off looking engine eyes, with a feathered headdress and buckskin pants, like some stock Mexican actor playing an Apache in an old episode of Bonanza. And his left arm was raised to the highway with an open palm, as if to say, "How?" to all the many travelers flowing past the Sugar Shark in that big home furniture place. And I am told if you were heading west at a certain time of day, near sunset, the Big Chief's right thumb hanging by his side in silhouette looked like a penis. And folks used to shoot arrows at his chest from the access road, and you could see them hanging like darts from his naked red teats. And his knees were pocked with bullet holes, and I can't think of anything more puro San Antonio than that. For there really was very little that was not offensive about Big Chief. But Big Chief didn't give a fuck. You're not the boss of him, and that's the vibe I got when I first rolled into town a dozen years ago. And just like Stephen F. Austin, I was divorced, paying child support, driving a borrowed company van, and looking for my last second chance in Tejas. Myself, admittedly, a very strange dude in a very strange land. And I didn't know if I'd fit in, being a carpet-bagging, dope-smoking, poetry-writing son of a bitch and all. But then, in a moment of muted satori, I beheld those big stupid boots outside North Star Mall, and then the chief staring me down with those big, weird, pissed-off looking engine eyes of his. And time stopped, and the grandfathers whispered secret wisdoms in my ear from beyond the spirit world. And the double tongues lost their grip on me, as I realized, after many, many miles and wasted years, that I'd finally found a place that was just weird enough for me, where I belonged, where maybe I could slide right in there like an old engine's legs into a pair of buckskin pants, or maybe I'd be normal. Still, now, sadly, the double tongues have returned, only this time with a crane to rip Big Chief from his mighty stilts and blot him from the earth. And why? Because Big Chief offends the Karens and the hipsters of the northern tribes, and though their lips are stained with bullshit, once again is repeated down through the bloodied, troubled history of the founding of the American Southwest. A bunch of truly annoying and sanctimonious white people decided where the red man should live. But really, it's just about selling cars. And that's what the grandfathers whispered to me as I rolled past his broken stilts and sighed the sadness of the ancient ones in a town not quite as fun and freaky as it was the day before. Just a few more, not many more. We're closing up shop here soon. I'll let you go back to your lives and stuff. Just see. I want to read another funny one. Do you mind if I read another funny one? This one is not what you think. This one's for my wife. It's called Red Hot Fucking Doggy Style. It's a new one. I'm a car wreck, I muttered, head in my hands, with a lucky strike between the knuckles of my wedding band hand and a cool midnight breeze blowing the smoke back into my eyes. No, my wife sighed, scanning our bank accounts on her phone, with her tiny legs dangling from the wicker chair in tight black yoga pants. You are more of a multi-car pileup, the kind that stops traffic for miles. I agreed with a chuckle because it was true but funny, or funny because it's true, and then we went to bed. I gave her a nice long back massage until the Ambien kicked in, and I fell asleep watching reruns of Rick and Morty in the dark. with my knees curled up under her butt, and the St. Jude candle flickering by the bedroom door, closed for the night, as the cats are scratching to get in from the other side, certain we are dead. Do you get it? It ain't got nothing to do with the title. Get it? Get what I did there? I want to read a poem now from my friend Ben. It's a new one. And then what do I have here? And then maybe one more after that. Yeah. This one is not even in a book. This one's not even off my phone yet. So this one I just wrote from a buddy, Ben Peach, who is watching right now. This poem is called Pard. His voice on the phone from his hospital room in Connecticut sounds like an October breeze whistling through a short pile of scattered, unraked leaves. When I ask him how he's doing, he says, "I'm tired, so tired, just tired." And somewhere in the wispy timbre of his words, I can still hear the echoes of his laughter on any given Saturday night back in the day, as we'd finish the wine and I'd say something stupid and gross to Mr. Peach just to crack him up, in between bouts of poetry writing on the floor of his bedroom in his parents' house on the bay in our early 20s, passing the microphone of a cassette tape recorder between us and reading what we'd scribbled down in our spiral-bound notebooks, convinced in our cups that we were reinventing the art of poetry itself. And maybe we did, just a little. But no one will ever know, save for Mr. Peach and me. And as he whispers wearily that he has to go because the nurse just came in, I tell him that I love him and promise to call back in a day or so. Then I hang up and weep a little quietly to myself on the porch, realizing then, in this moment, that in over 40 years of friendship, there has never been a single angry word between us. And what a rare and beautiful poem that is. And perhaps our greatest collaboration. I love you, Ben. Coming up in an hour and a half, we'll stop soon. I'll read this one, all right. Then one more, and we'll stop. Sound good? I am Bandera Road. Here's a new one. I am Bandera Road. And I write this poem because my wife and I have lived together for, I guess, 12 years now. And so as a kid, we moved around a lot with my dad's work. And even then when I became an adult and started working in radio, then I moved around a lot. So I haven't really lived in a lot of places for an extended period of time. Until now, I have actually lived in this neighborhood on the northwest side, Bandera Road in 1604, longer than I have lived anywhere in my life at any time. I lived in this neighborhood the longest. So this is my home. And I wanted to write a poem for my neighborhood. I have never read this aloud, so I hope I don't screw it up. Then I'll read one more. I am Bandera Road. I am that part of the world between Loops 410 and 1604 in San Antonio, Texas. However I came to be there, through chance or choice or random circumstance or sometimes love and poetry. I am the taquerias and the fruiterias and the payday loan places and the coin-operated laundromats and the pawn shops and the auto body garages and the discount tire places and the tattoo parlors and the vape stores and the strip mall churches and the Chinese food markets and the Indian buffets and the bowling alley and the barbecue joints and the Goodwill store. I am the Chachos and the Church's Chicken and the Bill Millers and the H-E-B and the Jalisco's and the Whataburger and the Dollar Tree and the Big Lots and the Peter Piper and the Circle K and the Bolero and the convenience store down the street next to the Walgreens and the Taco Paria and the half-price bookstore where sometimes you might find a copy of one of my poetry books that I signed and sold for $4 to buy a pack of smokes when I was 3 days away from my direct deposit going through. I am Bandera Road, some days rolling through Helotes for a lunch with friends at El Chaparral, or for bingo night at the Lions Club, maybe to get married to a West Side girl at the gardens of Old Town. I am Bandera Road, to the bones of my feet and the worn soles of my Crocs and chanclas. For I have lived along this stretch of road longer than I have lived anywhere in my weird, rambling life. Which is why, no matter how my day went, I always feel better as soon as I glide on down the Leon Valley Helotes ramp off the busy loop. Because I am home then. And home is where you are, sitting on the back porch and watching the sun go down through the live oak trees with no place better to be. All right, two more poems. I'm going to read. I wrote one more for Ruthie that I'm going to read. And then I have one final poem, and then we're done. And these books, well, Clowns and Outlaws, this thing is the one I'm pushing now, and it's on Amazon. That's my kid on the cover. This one's called Loving Ruthie Reprise. This is a true damn story. The whole gang was there. Kinky Friedman, Dylan Ferraro, Kent Perkins, Ruthie, and me. Having lunch at El Sombrero. And as Kent was describing hanging out at Groucho Marx's house and trying on Harpo's old wig, I happened to glance over at Ruthie sitting next to me. And she was holding a taco high above her head and watching a glob of cheese dripping slowly towards her plate. And as it got closer, she allowed it to cross her eyes. And she was 79 years old on that magical afternoon. And I laughed so hard I spit half my Modelo draft into an order of carne guisada. And that's what it was like sitting around a table with giants in a Mexican restaurant in the Texas Hill Country, eating tacos and huevos rancheros, as old Ruth Buzzi tries to crack you up to the lingering scent of stale cigars and fresh hand-rolled tortillas. I'm going to read actually two more poems. Is that cool? Because I got to stop. It's going on too long. But I like this poem. This is one for my wife that I wrote, and then I'll read the last one. Then I'm done. This one's called Me and You. This is for you, baby. Me and you. And again, this is a new one. Me and you. We've been through some shit together, me and you. Waiting rooms and hospital rooms and medical tubes and scans and vitals and nurses and surgeons and organ transplants and pink stomas and colostomy bags and wild drips of inky bile splattered on my shoe. Fire and death and more death and cancer and hospice and age and dementia and morphine and my old mother pulling your hair. Bills and bills and bills and money and no money and mortgages and HOAs and payday loans and lawyer letters and credit cards and roof repairs and auto notes and auto repairs and dead batteries and brake pads and engine fans and burned out alternators. Booze and booze and booze and pain pills and sleeping pills and anxiety pills and mood enhancing pills. Shitloads of booze and a daily secret drinking binge, and sometimes forgetting where I stuffed the tiny, empty plastic mini bottles. In the bathroom with a sock drawer. And then you crying and slamming doors with another freshly broken heart early the next morning. Yeah, me and you, we've been through some shit together in the many hard seasons of us. Look at us now, climbing out from the rubble on the beach after the storm, and shaking the dust and the grit and the ashes from our shoulders, and looking up and through a break in the clouds as a sunbeam hits us both in the face. You see me, and I see you, with the shadows behind us now, because there is no calamity that we can't handle. Just me and you being me and you, tap dancing our way through this bumpy life, smelling the roses and tortillas along the way, and saying filthy things out loud because it cracks us up. And that's how we roll, me and you. I love you, baby. I'll read the short one, then the last one. I just can't stop. This one I wrote recently. It's called Fall Risk. I wrote this after my last operation. Fall Risk, says the plastic yellow band on my wrist. And in a relative universe, there really isn't much difference between me rolling my ass off the edge of the bed in an abdominal binder, high off pain meds after a mesh repair, and then slow walking my butt down the hallway to the kitchen, steadying myself with my fingertips along the walls at 3 a.m. for some chicken nuggets and a bowl of fudge swirled banana ice cream. And old Tom Cruise jumping out of a helicopter at 75,000 feet and lighting his own parachute on fire, because relative to our age and circumstance, both involve a serious fall risk. I read some goofy shit. Now it's time for the final poem. And this is the last poem in this book, Clowns and Outlaws. And I hope it makes sense. This is kind of my life now. It's called Never Too Late for the Lost and the Addicted. It's never too late, even if you're telling yourself that all is lost, the ship is sinking, and the world is better off without you. It's never too late, even if the boss just cut you loose and the mortgage is due and the car payment is due and your child support is due and the goddamn phone is ringing off the hook and there's no one left to call for a loan. It's never too late, even if you're splayed out on the bed of some shitty motel room in some shitty part of town with a Bible and a bottle on the nightstand next to the phone. And you're all alone in the world, eating Pop-Tarts from the old vending machine down the hall to keep yourself from puking, binge watching a TV show that is depressing the hell out of you, but you just don't care enough to get up and find the remote. It's never too late, even if your friends and family have all cut bait on you, and your kid hates your guts, and the neighbors hate your guts, and your exes hate your guts, and your coworkers hate your guts, and you suspect even your cats hate your filthy, stinking, mean, and drunk-ass guts. It's never too late, even if you think you deserve an ugly fate because of all the ugly things you did and said, and all the ugly lies you told, and all the ugly chaos and hurtful bullshit you brought into the lives of the people you love the most. It's never too late. Even if you think it's too late because you're on the wrong side of 55 and you take 100 pills a day and you drink like a fish and your body aches and seeps and bleeds and you've lived your stupid life and you can't undo the past or right the wrongs. So what is the motherfucking point? Listen to me now, because I know, because I have lived it. As long as you have wind in your lungs and a pulse on your wrist, you still have time to reach a hand up through the murk. Find a room with some junkies and drunks on the mend, and someone there will guide you past the storm of you, and I promise they won't let go of your hand until you feel the sun again. Man, it's beautiful there. And it's only too late when they roll you to the freezer. So if you're reading this now, you still have time to be reborn. Like a phoenix picking the ashes from its wings and feathered with redemption. I guess that's it. Thanks for hanging out. That was weird. We'll try this again real soon. As I like to say every day, spread the love.